So as a disclaimer before we get started, I do have to say that everything here that is getting ready to be presented is all future facing information. It is subject to change, and as such, there cannot be any contracts or promises made in terms of the delivery of the functionality that's being presented. So with that, I did want to just discuss going into this, I started compiling what we wanted to really hit on as part of the upcoming releases and new functionality that will be coming soon with the next release of Cityworks. And there were some major themes here. There's actually a lot of new functionality and new capabilities that are coming. As an example, my team has given updates to the sales team and the account management teams in the last couple of weeks, and those meetings have run between 2 to 3 hours, just to give them a flavor of everything that's going to be coming. For the purposes of today, I have it kind of boiled down to 12 minutes here, so I'm just trying to keep it to the highlights and make sure that some of these major points are made aware. And then hopefully you guys will have a chance to really dive into the release notes and the announcements once all that's made available. So with that, there's a lot of new enhancements to the GIS in terms of the functionality and the integrations with Cityworks and what that means in relation to the platform. We're also opening up now for the first time with extensibility across the HTML5 apps, starting with Respond, and I'll get into that a little bit more. The level of capability and functionality that's coming through now with inventory management, with Storeroom, and then overall the user experience. So let me see here. There we go. Oops, went too far. I'm sorry, I'm not. There we go. There we go. Sorry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and start off here with the GIS. And one of the biggest things that we have coming to the platform and with the JavaScript 4X viewer, which is, again, just a reminder, that's the map viewer that's available across Respond, Operational Insights, OpEx, and those other HTML5 apps. With the JavaScript 4X API that's available there, we're now able to provide a full 3D context within Cityworks. So with that, we're providing support for ArcGIS scene viewers in 3D. There is functionality there to actually display all of your Cityworks activities with a Z level for tracking, so actually a 3D representation of your work activities in Cityworks, and the ability to dynamically switch back and forth between 2D and 3D depending on that user and their workflow and where they're actually, how they're interacting with the data at that time, and being able to support a dynamic experience there. And so with that, I have just a quick video that kind of goes through and shows an example. And this is actually taken from Cityworks Respond, and it's showing that functionality and that view of that 3D data. And with that, we've actually brought in and incorporated a number of the out-of-the-box widgets that Esri provides for 3D visualization and the scene support here. And so you can see there's ability here to start getting into some of the items such as, shading and daylight. This is important to represent and to give that full context for the 3D in terms of the value that 3D brings to your organizations. But if you're thinking, in terms of like 3D for PLL and community development, understanding how a new development that's coming into the community, how that starts to affect shading, visibility for other surrounding existing developments that are already in place, and having that something that can be viewed here from the back office pretty simply and quickly. And then being able to also bring in some of that other information that we have here as well from Nearmap. So some of this data that you're seeing here is being brought in from a business partner. And this is the type of stuff that we wanted to really highlight because we know that not every organization has 3D data just available to them today. But there's a number of other resources that are available to help support that process and start to build out that 3D data, to take the information that's coming from organizations like Nearmap, or best practices from Esri, and then we can also assist with to take some of that information and start to extrude existing data in the 2D world into a 3D context. And so as I zoom through here, you can just start to see we have the overlay of the utility features. There's also information that's being shown here in terms of Cityworks activities that are being represented in 3D, and that's all something that's coming soon. And we're pretty excited about it. It really starts to lay the foundation for a lot of the work that we have been doing in terms of vertical assets and being able to get into some of that functionality as well for indoors, getting an integration with ArcGIS Urban, which I'll be talking about in a little bit as well. As well, when we start to look at the GIS, we also are now able to have subtype support. And this is really relevant. I was so excited because I heard those last two presentations where there was discussion about the process to actually start going to the utility network. And that's something where the subtype support is critical. And it's something that is critical for the utility network functionality and configuration for our customers, it's also something that's providing more value for our customers, even beyond utility network. So this is allowing us to actually natively read those utility network feature services, bring in that information and start to associate those subtypes and subtype groupings as part of the information that's being tracked for the asset definition, and the way that the information is being tracked there through the service layers and flowing down through Cityworks, so we can start to have all the full functionality of Cityworks applied against those groupings and subtypes within the system, searching capabilities, map representation, having that full support across the application. So I'm hoping this will come out, and those groups like Indio and Evansville, as they start to move to the utility network, we can have another round of Converge where we can start to see how they've been adopting this and bringing that functionality from Cityworks in as part of their implementations. And then in terms of where things are headed, there's a lot of work going on currently in relation to the GIS within Cityworks. We do focus on being GIS centric, and it's something that is never done. We're always bringing in new functionality from Esri, as well as extending the functionality that we have for our users. So there's work being done currently to bring some of those 3X tools over to the 4X context. And you can see here, some of these are tools that we had available during the Silverlight days, such as a heat map, and we didn't necessarily have it in the 3X map currently in Office. And being able to bring those over and actually provide those again back in the 4X map is something that a lot of customers have been looking forward to. We're also going to be introducing some new widgets because of the new functionality we're providing along the lines of 3D and the UN. So being able to have those 3D widgets there for, you can see here the Slice widget, Building Explorer, actually getting into some of the redlining and editor snapping, but then also with the utility network trace tool, incorporating that in our 4X map to provide users with a seamless context and experience so that they can actually go through and perform that utility network tracing within the Cityworks map, select the assets such as valves. If there's a water main break and they need to shut down services, having that all available to create those work orders immediately and just stay within that single context to perform that entire workflow. And so I mentioned extensibility. We've been looking for a while at a way to actually provide some of that functionality that we had in Office that we had to move away from due to security vulnerabilities with the JavaScript injection. And with that, with the HTML5 apps, we're introducing extensibility. So this will be something that can be configured in the Style app, and it can allow organizations to actually go ahead and bring in extensibility into the forms and designate where on the form this is going to be located, how it'll be accessed. And so an example, one of the most common workflows that we've seen in terms of the request for this is in relation to attachments as part of the permitting workflow. So being able to directly from Cityworks Respond, go through and upload attachments as part of a PLL permit application review process. And being able to take those attachments, whether they're pictures that are taking place from inspections out in the field, plans that are being submitted, and immediately launch them into a document management system, such as one of our partner applications like OnBase, and having that flow through directly from Cityworks. And the user doesn't have to, log out, log into another application, run screens side by side or any of that. It's just a continuous screen and one experience for those users. As well, we've made a lot of improvements to Query Editor, and this covers, in terms of getting into more of the type of fields that can be searched upon and what fields can actually be returned in those results. And so what you can see here is actually the incorporation now for those custom fields that are taking place as part of the work order, service request, and inspection processes, as well as also searching against costing information. And then you can see here as well on the response side what fields are actually now available, that expansion of the fields that are available to be returned in those results to create those queries that are then populating those dashboards. And then as well, kind of expanding upon that, the addition of PLL custom fields to respond. So being able, as you can see here, to go through and specify in the admin app new custom fields that are tied to payment, and then actually the exposure, how those are actually being exposed through the actual application there on the make payment screen here. So there's a number of new capabilities that are coming through with PLL. Again, I can't fit everything into the time frame that we have here. We will be running a webinar series after the next release to really start to dive into more of that functionality, but this will all also be available through release notes and the documentation that we'll be providing. So this is just some examples of the roadmap and what is to come still with Respond. There's a lot of focus going into expanding Respond and creating more functionality there, providing some of those capabilities that we had in Office and making sure that those are being brought over to Respond to close some of those functionality gaps. And then with Storeroom, there's been a number of significant enhancements to Storeroom. And some of the biggest ones, you can see those items here. These are things that we've been hearing from customers in terms of, damaged material tracking. When damaged materials come in as part of a requisition, being able to identify those, being able to actually have that information taken back to the vendor and actually being able to do the correct financial auditing and tracking as part of that process. Directly opening work orders from the Storeroom dashboard. So based off of queries that are being generated with those work order search results, being able to click those links and immediately launch a work order from Storeroom and having that, again, be a single experience for those users. They're not jumping back and forth between different apps, and the system's taking care of what data is being presented. So one of the big ones that I actually want to go ahead and highlight here is in relation to the serialization. And so you can see here, there's a few screen captures I took just in terms of some of that functionality. On the left-hand screen capture, you can see as part of that configuration, we actually have the ability to go through and upload from a CSV and bring in all the serialization information that's being provided for new materials coming into the storeroom. So this could be valves, it could be chemicals, it could be pumps, any type of asset that's coming in, any type of inventory or material that's coming into the storeroom can then be serialized. The benefit of this is, as you can see on the following screen capture as well, the ability to now track the warranty date, expiration date, all tied back to a specific serial number. This is laying the foundation for more functionality to come. So along the way for the roadmap, now that we have the serialization in place, we're actually able to start taking it into a process where we can go through and be tracking from that material as it comes into a storeroom from a requisition, comes into the storeroom, is issued out to a truck, issued from a truck to a work order, and then from a work order is actually installed in the field and becomes an actual asset. We can do that conversion in the future from inventory into an asset in the GIS, and being able to backtrack to identify if that asset fails in the field, where did it originate within the whole supply chain process, and being able to track that information back to the actual vendor. So this is really exciting for us. It's kind of, that whole extension of being a GIS-centric application in terms of tracking how these materials actually play a part in the workflow process and then become part of the asset management process. And this is just a screenshot showing, again, for those damaged materials, this is one of those workflows that was critical for a lot of the store managers that we were working with, and being able to track the damage quantity and then having that returned back to the vendor and not included as part of that financial process for the auditing for the materials coming into that storeroom. And then as we start to get into some of the UI enhancements that have been made, where we're really starting to see some of that take place is in relation to the native apps. So I wanted to highlight here some of the items that you'll actually see. One item off the bat is in terms of the native apps, and we know that there's a lot of locations there, such as the submit to fields, supervisor assignments, where there's a lot of scrolling that's taking place due to the number of employees that might be listed there to make that assignment process. Now we're able to actually go through and do an autofill and do a dynamic filter search. So as we start typing in the first few letters of a name, any part of that name, or if we actually use the speak and the voice audio option, being able to actually filter down that list automatically and have a smaller group that's actually being used for the results that are being populated there. So just trying to ease that field process so there's not so much scrolling down on panels and pages. And then as well, extending the functionality in the native apps to incorporate part of what we already have available in Respond and Storeroom. So being able to capture those signatures out in the field as part of the inspection process. And then extending those user enhancements into public access. So one of the new items that will be coming with public access is the ability to configure guided access. And so this will be taking place on the admin side, and users can go through and identify where they want to provide feedback to residents and contractors as they're going through and populating the pages in public access and identifying what pieces of information are critical, giving more context for what type of attachments need to be included, and essentially providing a step-by-step interface to really make sure that as citizens and contractors are going through the application process, they're aware of all the requirements to make sure that that process and that submittal can be completed. And then as well, moving into integration with ArcGIS Urban. And so this is something that we've been talking about for a while. We've completed the integration and we're starting to work with a few customer sites here to start to look at how that data actually starts to play within their environments and what some of the parameters are that need to be passed back and forth and refining it. But this gives us another option here to have a way to have a 3D data set brought in as part of that development process, and then actually visualized within the context of the current community current development in buildings, bringing that information in 3D and looking at the effects of it as part of that plan review process. And I think that's it. And so those were some of the top highlights that we wanted to make sure to hit.